Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Out and About in the UK. Coming up on today's show, we'll be at Wigmore Hall to meet some of the performers and director John Gilhooly as they prepare for a very special Easter Rising Centenary Commemoration Concert. On last week's show we featured the London Uileann Pipes Club, and one of the members, Dutch native Hubert Kwisthout, told us a bit more about what goes into making a set of Uileann pipes. But first we've come along to the Houses of Parliament here in Westminster to join the IIBN and the British and Irish Chamber of Commerce to celebrate and commemorate trade links between Britain and Ireland. John, tell us about today's event.
It's a fantastic event, and we're here to celebrate with our friends at Irish International Business Network, IIBN, the collaborations in business jointly between businesses from Ireland and businesses from the United Kingdom that have helped to create a fantastic volume of trade, over $1.2 billion a week now between the two islands, sustaining over 400,000 jobs, roughly half and half between the two. So that's what we're here to celebrate right across the spectrum, from the tourism industry, the construction industry, the hospitality industry, things like life sciences, energy, the food industry of course, and many other goods and services that flow between us, and it's a wonderful day to be here at Westminster.
And two organisations like the IIBN and the British and Irish Chamber of Commerce working together, it's great to see it.
Well, we have a saying in Ireland, as you know, Ian, it's called Ní Neart go Cur le Chéile. It means that nothing beats working together, and when Ambassador Mulhall asked us last year to work together, IIBN and the British Irish Chamber of Commerce, we both jumped at it, and why wouldn't we? It's a fantastic thing to be able to do in a year of celebrations and acknowledgements of wonderful endeavour by so many people to bring us to where we are today over the past 100 years. And Dan inimitably said, glancing back but really looking forward to building today's 60 billion trade to doubling that by 2026, and that's what we're working together to achieve.
Independence, which came about because of the Easter Rising, has given Ireland the opportunity to make our own way economically in the world. Now, of course, it's difficult for a small country, and remember, we became independent just 10 years before the Great Depression, so it wasn't an easy time to become independent, but at least we were able to make our own way in the world. And I would say that there were ups and downs in the first 30 or 40 years. Then the economy opened out from the early 60s onwards, and in particular since we joined the European Union we've made huge advances, and we're now number 6 in the world on the United Nations Human Development Index, and that shows the kind of progress we've made, albeit that there's still work to be done, and we can't take anything for granted, especially in the world we have today.
We basically said that what we wanted to do was have a look at Irish business relations and how they had progressed since 1916. This is a very obviously pivotal year for Ireland and for the UK, and it really was looking about the relationship that we've built up and looking to the future as well in terms of the next 100 years and what that might look like.
What a lot of people don't know is that there wasn't a lot of British multinational investment in Ireland before independence, that in fact an Irish indigenous company, Jacobs, which had a factory in Liverpool, had a bigger factory in the UK than any British company had in Ireland. So British firms started to move into Ireland in the 1920s. The first big move was in 1923, because when we got our independence, excise duties were imposed on tobacco trade. So Clares and Wills set up factories in Ireland, and Carroll's, which had a big Scottish trade based on Sweet Afton, which is a Robert Burns poem, because Burns' sister lived in Dundalk, where Carroll's is based. It set up a factory in Liverpool. So we got this cross movement in foreign direct investment in 1923. So by the late 1920s, of the 9 biggest factories in the Irish Free State, 3 of them were multinationals. So Ford, of course, which was American, but 2 of them were British multinationals, Clares and Wills and Cross and Blackwell, which had acquired a big Irish firm. And these came into Ireland based on Cumann and Wales' moderate policy of protectionism. But this whole process accelerated under Fianna Fáil, which instituted much more rigorous protectionist policies. And lots of British firms moved in to jump over those tariff barriers. So amongst the biggest of those were Cadbury's, which employed 2,000 people in 1960, Rowntree, which employed over 1,000, and a number of shoe-making companies which employed over 1,000 each. Dunlop employed over 1,000. These were big employers. And so all of that movement of foreign direct investment was actually in response to trade barriers. So when we talk about the possibility of Brexit would be detrimental to Ireland, undoubtedly, but what we see when we look at how businesses operate is that they find ways around barriers that governments erect. And one thing that hasn't been taken into account in the Irish debate on Brexit, which is in a way a silver lining to the very dark cloud, would be that you would find British firms moving into Ireland to get access to the European market. Because think of what Ireland has to offer: a low tax regime, English speaking environment, common law, legal system and so on. We would get lots of British firms moving into Ireland. It wouldn't outweigh the disadvantages, but it is something that has been ignored in the debate so far.
Liz, tell us a little bit more about the IIBN, your international organisation.
We are indeed. So we started in London originally about 8 years ago. We now have chapters in Dublin and in New York, and this year we will be launching a chapter in Sydney. So we are basically a business network. We're all about doing business together. We tend to be more individuals than organisations. We have a whole variety of different businesses and business communities involved and individuals. Some of our patrons include people like Willie Walsh and Peter Sutherland and Ronan Dunn.
Barbara Ann, tell us about the relationship between the Cork Chamber of Commerce and the IIBN.
Well, the IIBN are a fantastic network here in London, and I suppose we're recognising the importance of building relationships with a city so close to us as London. We're extremely good at building relationships with our sister cities in the US and in China, and I guess a growing awareness of the opportunities that lie so close to us here in London. So Sinead and the rest of the team of the IIBN have been extremely helpful in building that relationship for us.
I'm very privileged to have both the British Irish Chamber of Commerce and the Irish International Business Network working here, and I work with them steadily in order to strengthen trade relationships between Britain and Ireland, because I think that's where the future is, and this holds a very important aspect of this for me in Northern Ireland, because I believe that it's only through building prosperity and creating jobs that we can create the stability that we need, not just economically but politically as well. And we have effectively a country to build. Problems in the north of Ireland, the problems in the south of Ireland may be slightly different, but it behoves us in this generation, as we look back 100 years, to scope forward another 100 years and set our sights, set our ambitions to be world leaders wherever we can and however we can.
How big an impact did the Ireland's entrance to the EU make in 1973?
Huge. If you look at our situation before we joined the European Union, we had a wealth level of 2/3 of the European average. We were very heavily dependent on agriculture and too heavily dependent on a single market, which was the UK market. Now we have a diverse economy, strongly based on services, manufacturing. Agriculture is still important, but it's not as important as it was proportionately 40 years ago. So we've been able to diversify and develop our economy in a huge way by taking advantage of EU membership and by being with Britain as members of the European Union. This has transformed Irish-UK relations in a very positive way.
Notwithstanding what's happening here on the shores of our nearest neighbour and closest ally and friend, Irish people remain quite positively disposed towards Europe and the EU, with over 80% of those polled in a survey that we commissioned Red C to carry out last year being in favour of Ireland's continued membership of the European Union. And when asked the question, if the UK were to leave the European Union, should Ireland leave too, 77% of those disagreed. So what we're seeing is a really strong positive disposition towards our continued engagement and membership of the European Union, notwithstanding the challenges and difficulties. We're not saying that the EU is perfect, far from it. However, the consensus amongst Irish people, over 3/4 of them saying that, if the UK were to vote to leave with less than 60 days to go, Irish people want Ireland to remain part of the EU, and that's obviously something we welcome.
Well, I think we heard tonight some very interesting stories, and a lot of actually people telling the personal realities of what's going to happen to their business. So when you hear that, I think it really brings home the reality of what a Brexit would mean for both the UK and the Irish economy. So look, I think our stance would be we prefer to see stability, and we prefer to see the UK as part of Europe. They're our closest trading partner and are hugely important to us. But as I said, I think what resonated tonight for me was the stories of people personally saying what's going to happen to their business if should the vote go the other way.
What message would you give to people watching tonight about Britain and Ireland in terms of economy and moving forward?
Well, I think we have had a turbulent history for many hundreds of years, and it has been particularly difficult in the last 100 years. And I think we now have to. I think there was a pivotal point with the Queen's visit to Ireland some years back, and that pivot was completed by Michael D. Higgins' visit here. The animosities are behind us, and it is now a question of looking forward and of maximising our relationship to ensure the maximum possible benefit for all our people, economically, politically, socially. And we have a special relationship. We have free movement of people, we have free movement of goods, we have free movement of a lot of stuff. We want to keep that. And that's where Britain leaving the European Union would threaten all of that.
Britain is our most important economic partner, there's no doubt about that. It only represents about 16% of our exports, but if you look at the exports of Irish-owned companies, they export about 40% of all they produce, of all they export to the UK, and that's how important it is. It's also a very important source of inward investment into Ireland, and also this is a place where Irish companies, when they want to expand, they come here first to Britain because this is the easiest market for Irish companies to penetrate, and that's why it would be such a big blow for Ireland if Britain were to decide to leave the European Union.
Any more information that might be relevant to the viewers?
Well, sign up, both for our friends at Irish International Business Network, IIBN, and the British Irish Chamber of Commerce. Check our websites, iibn.com and britishirishchamber.com, and get involved. As I said at the top, Ninarka Curla Kayla, now's your chance.
We're going to take a break right now, but do come back to us for the second half of the show. You're very welcome back to the show. Well, I've come along here to Wigmore Hall in the heart of central London to meet some of the performers and organisers as to prepare for a very special event, Irish Culture in Britain, a centenary celebration. John, we've popped into the rehearsal session for what promised to be an amazing concert, Irish Culture in Britain, a centenary celebration. You must be particularly delighted.
Yes, it's absolutely wonderful to welcome so many great Irish artists here this evening, the best of the young generation of singers and pianists, and Dame Anne-Marie, of course, who celebrates 40 years this season as a singer at the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, but her achievements, of course, are far more than that. She's internationally acclaimed. She's not only a great ambassador for Ireland, she's a great ambassador for artistry, for singing. She's loved as a singer of Mahler and Handel, and in the lead she's had a particular association with this hall, and we would present her with the Wigmore Hall medal tonight in celebration of that career of almost more than 4 decades, and I think it would be quite an emotional experience, and it's also a way of reflecting the great friendship and the spirit of being good neighbours between Ireland and Britain, and that's what this is about in this week, this actual anniversary week of 1916. Tonight's concert is a celebration. It's a thank you in a way for how well Irish artists have done here in the UK, and it acknowledges our differences but our shared heritage, and how particularly our relationship in the fields of music and literature has been exceptional over the past 100 years. And of course we must look to the future, and this is all about peace and reconciliation, and the audience reflects that tonight very much indeed.
And for a Limerick native to be a director of this amazing concert hall, it's a huge achievement on your own part.
Yeah, I've been here 16 years, but tonight is very special because it's the first time that I'll get to speak on the stage as Gaeilge, and that's something that I've wanted to do for 16 years. I'm always afraid that when I walk on stage to say something that I'm going to begin with the Yíomh Macáirde. Well, tonight I can.
And what does it mean to be here tonight?
It's amazing. Did any of us ever think that something like this would happen? Of course, I've introduced, and many of my colleagues have introduced Irish songs in concert, but to have this wonderful historic and musical reunification, reconciliation, whatever it's called, it doesn't really matter. It's a huge tribute to Ireland for having given us the talents we've got, and England, or Great Britain of course, but England mainly, who have nurtured us and given us opportunities that really, certainly in my day, I would not have had.
That's great to see Irish performers and Irish talent coming to the top here.
It is. Well, this is an amazing hall. I mean, it's the top hall really in the world for the type of thing they do here, song recitals and the like. So for us all to be here performing is absolutely fantastic. A lot of us would have sung here before in the past, but for us all to be coming together, it's kind of like a big party back there now, getting ready.
It changed its name after the Great War, just like the royal family here. It was called Bechstein Hall, which was a German piano making firm, and they owned the hall as a great showcase for their pianos, and news of its wonderful acoustics spread all over the world and made the great artists of that time flock here, and that's what gave it its early renown. But the Bechstein family were more or less kicked out of London after the Great War because of that anti-German feeling in London, and even German song here was performed in English or in French for 10 years after the First World War. Such was the extent of the anti-German feeling. Debenhams bought the place, lock, stock and barrel, and over 100 pianos for £50,000, which was a fraction of what it actually cost to build in 1899, between 1899 and 1901. And we continue that great heritage, that great tradition, and Count John McCormack actually sang here, who of course, next to Anne Murray, is probably the person who's achieved most in the international singing world over the past 100 years.
I think I sang here first in about 1970, only as a competitor in the Kathleen Ferrier competition, which I sang spectacularly badly. So I didn't get through, but I did sing here, and then subsequent prizes I happened to win and things like that were fine. But then when I joined the Songmakers Almanac, I did many concerts with the wonderful Graham Johnson, and then with many other pianists as well.
Just finally, for viewers, if they want to find out more about Wigmore Hall, is there contact details, website?
Yes, www.wigmore-hall.org.uk, and tonight's gala concert will remain online indefinitely, so do have a look. It's 2.5 hours long, but I think it's worth the watch and the listen, and you'll see the best that Ireland has to offer, and how Irish artists can stand up and be as good as any other in the world, and that's what tonight is all about.
Many thanks there to John Gilhooly and indeed the performers for taking the time out of their busy rehearsal schedule to speak to us. Next we're off to South London to meet Dutch native Hubert Kwisthout, who's a member of the London Uileann Pipes Club, to find out more about what goes into making a set of Uileann pipes. Hubert, we're here at the Pipers Club here in South London. Tell us about your love of the pipes. You're originally from Holland, and so is that a country that's synonymous with the pipe players?
Not at all. No. But where I grew up in Hilversum, they had a pipe band, a Scottish pipe band, and they wheel them out on the Queen's birthday and other festivities, and so you see them marching along. I was always captivated by these pipes, so I joined them with the earliest opportunity when I was 12. So that's when I learned to play Scottish pipes. And later on, after 7 years, marching about, so I went off to study in Amsterdam, and I dropped them. But I knew there were these Irish pipe existed, although this was in the 70s, so before internet and before being able to find out anything about them. So it took me 2 years to find somebody who actually played them in Holland, and he got me in touch with the maker, the pipe maker who made his pipes, which was Alan Ginsberg, also here in London. So I got a set from Alan, and I expressed an interest in learning how to make them, and Alan was moving back to Wales, where he was from, and so I joined him and his family in '79 to learn how to make these pipes. So that's why I have been in this country since then, and been making pipes on and off.
So not only are you a piper, you also make pipes.
Yeah. So that's precisely. So from one came the other. You know, in Holland I was doing social work, which was depressing after a number of years. And I thought I have to get away from this. So when the opportunity arose to go to Wales and work with this pipe maker, I thought, why not? So I basically emigrated.
And take us through the process of actually making a set of pipes.
Well, yes. Well, there's a good reason that they're quite expensive. They're complicated instruments to make. There's a lot of items, a lot of bits to them, which you all have to make individually by hand, and that takes time. And time, as you know, is money. So a full set of pipes there is a practice set, so that. Is not as complicated, but a full set of pipes, takes about 250 hours to make.
And so what's the main material that's used in those?
All bagpipes have a bag, which is an air reservoir, like an organ, And in this case, you don't have to blow them. You've got bellows, like these, where you blow the bag up with, and then you got the main playing pipe, the chanter, which is common to all type of bagpipes. That's on which you play the melody. And then you got, as we will see later on, the drones, which are bourdon pipes, which give a continuous buzz or sound. And the Irish pipes are then extra complicated by having these closed, what they call regulators, where you can play some melody or a counter melody or a rhythmical accompaniment. And so all in all, they're quite extraordinary instruments, which also look very complicated to play.
And Hubert, you must be quite a patient man, because you also teach the pipes.
Well, yes, they're not. They're not the easiest instruments to pick up. And so it's until people get the basic rhythm, there's very little you can do. And it's of course I'm used to them, but for people who are not, very few wives. Unfortunately it's mostly men who learn them. We've got very few girls who pick them up. And most wives, I found out, as you will find out yourself here, they don't like them. So, which is understandable, because they're not the best instruments to listen to if somebody's learning. So, but that's what you do. You have to learn. And
if people want to find out more about the art of making pipes, have you got a website?
Yes, it's IIBN.pipes.com, which says it all, really.
Well, many thanks there to Hubert for taking the time to speak to us, and I'd never realised how much work goes into making such a wonderful instrument. If you'd like to contact the show, send an email to ian@irishtv.ie. You can also find us on Facebook and on Twitter. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have right now, but do come back to us next week when we'll be out and about in the UK.